Hello, fellow late night lurkers. I'm OldDadGuy. I tell scary stories so you can question every sound in your house at 2 a.m. You're welcome. No turning back now. Hey, everybody. Um, if this last episode my voice sounds a little off, I was camping this weekend and not sure what I did, but maybe sleeping outside, something like that, made me lose my voice. But either way, the camping did make me think about doing like national park and park ranger related stories again, so some more of those coming your way. I hope you enjoy. I'm not supposed to talk about this. They actually made me sign paperwork. Lots of it. After the incident, I was placed on leave. Mandatory psychological review, they said. But they never explained what happened. Not in writing. Not out loud. And they made it very clear I wasn't to speak about what I saw. But the nightmares haven't stopped. My name's Aaron Cho. I was a back county ranger assigned to Rockvale Gorge, a lesser-known unit of sprawling Appalachian park network. If you haven't heard of it, that's not surprising. It's the kind of place hikers pass through on a way to somewhere else, more Instagram-worthy. Dense forests, narrow switchbacks, old mining trails no one's maintained in decades. We got maybe 15 visitors a week, mostly experienced types, solo hikers, hunters, occasionally someone looking to disappear for a while. Which is what made the McAllister report stand out. A single father and his 2 kids, teenagers, never checked out after a 2-day trip. Their car sat untouched in the visitor lot. No GPS trail logs, no calls, just gone. I volunteered to lead the initial sweep. I followed their permit route, which traced an old loop through Rockvale Basin, up into the gorge, and back along the ridge. It should have taken 6 hours round trip. I found their first camp near mile marker 7. Tent still intact. Food hung properly, but the fire pit was cold, like days cold. And something else. 3 pairs of boots, lined perfectly outside the tent flap, all facing west, all laced tight. No one was inside. I radioed it in. My supervisor told me to continue, but not engage. If I saw anything, let the team handle it, he said. But I didn't listen. The gorge was unnaturally silent. I've done this job for 8 years. You learn to read a forest's mood. Rockvale was off. No wind, no birds, just the sound of my own boots and breath. And then I saw them. 3 people, standing in the middle of the trail, perfectly still, not facing me, not moving. I shouted. They didn't react. I moved closer. Slow, hand on my sidearm. Still no movement. They were the McAllisters, or looked like them, at least. But they weren't breathing. Their eyes were open, wide, unblinking, skin pale, lips parted slightly. I touched the boy's arm. It was cold, but not stiff, more like hollow. That's when I noticed tiny strands of something fibrous protruding from the corners of their eyes and mouths, like hair. No, roots. I stepped back, horrified. That's when I heard the rustle. Not leaves, not an animal. It came from the trees above. I looked up and saw more figures, tangled in the canopy, hanging not by ropes, but woven cords of bark and vine. Dozens of them, faces frozen in silence. I ran, didn't stop until I hit the trailhead. When the team arrived, the bodies were gone. So were the boots. The camp had been picked clean. I asked for the radio recordings. The supervisor said they were incomplete. I asked to speak to the search team. They'd been reassigned. But I still hear the rustling, even now, in my apartment, hundreds of miles away. Something in those woods doesn't just take you. It replaces you and leaves your skin behind to watch. The name's Daryl Kemper. I've worked with the National Park Service going on 16 years now, most of them in remote regions of the Rockies. I've seen avalanches, mountain lions, forest fires, and one time a guy who tried to live inside a bear den. But nothing rattled me quite like what happened near Copper Ridge. It was mid-June. We had a late snow melt, so the upper trails were still being cleared. I was assigned snow patrol up to Firewatch Station 9, a tower that hadn't been staffed in almost 5 years, but still needed to be checked for structural integrity and radio calibration. The trail up to Copper Ridge is a steep one, about 12 miles from the closest outpost and only accessible by foot. No cell service, no quick exits. About halfway up, I started getting a weird ping on my handheld radio. Just static at first, then something like a garbled voice cutting in and out. I paused, thinking maybe it was a ranger testing equipment. I called back, gave my coordinates. Nothing. Then a single word came through, clear as a bell. Help! I stood there a long time, waiting. Then the radio squelched again, and I heard it a second time. Help! Only this time, it was followed by crying. I picked up my pace, checking every few feet for signs of a hiker. There was nothing. No tracks, no broken foliage. The woods were still. Not quiet. Still. By the time I reached the tower, the sun was starting to dip behind the ridge. The place looked abandoned, weather-worn but stable. I climbed the stairs, opened the door, and froze. The logbook was open. Last entry dated 4 days prior. It read, "Don't answer the signal. It's not them." I flipped backward. No other entries since 2019. Then the radio flared again. Only this time, it wasn't crying. It was laughter. Low, ragged, human, adjacent. I backed out of the cabin, suddenly aware that I wasn't alone. The trees around the tower swayed, though there was no wind. Shadows pulled unnaturally near the base of the ridge. Then my radio screamed. A wall of sound. Laughter, voices, static, all layered and wrong, poured through the speaker. And I saw them. Figures crawling up the slope. Dozens. Not walking, climbing, and too fast. Too quiet. Some were missing limbs. Others had faces stretched too long, and all of them were wearing park uniforms. I ran. I didn't stop until I made it to the base camp at dawn. The tower was decommissioned permanently after that. I never got a straight answer from my superiors, just a reassignment slip and a new route. But sometimes my radio still pings with that signal. Help! If you're ever hiking near Copper Ridge and your radio crackles to life, don't answer it, because something out there is pretending to be lost, and it's looking for someone who listens. My name's Caleb Dorsey, retired ranger. I still remember that cabin like I walked out of it yesterday. It's been almost 10 years since I left my post in the Bitterroot Wilderness, and though I've done my best to move on, I still wake up some nights hearing the scratching. Back then, we had an old service cabin on Broken Elk Trail, an emergency shelter that barely anyone knew about. It wasn't on maps, not open to the public, and half sunk into the hillside like the earth wanted it gone. Still, every few months, I'd hike out to check for squatters, wildlife damage, and weather exposure. The last time I visited was in October. Snow was coming in early that year. I remember how dead the forest felt that day. No birds, no bugs, just brittle leaves and an emptiness that sat too heavy on my chest. The door to the cabin was ajar. I drew my sidearm, expecting a bear, or worse, a hunter squatting for the season. But inside, the place was clean. Too clean, really. Cobwebs were cleared, dust swept into perfect corners, and on the table was a journal. A new one. The handwriting inside wasn't mine. Neat. Precise. The first entry was dated 2 weeks earlier. It read, "I've taken shelter. The others are gone. I hear it circling at night." The next entries were increasingly frantic. Mentions of scratching along the roof. A pale figure glimpsed through the trees. The writer never named it, just called it the quiet thing. The final entry chilled me, though. It doesn't knock. It waits. And I'm running out of silence. That's when I heard the first scratch. I turned slowly, every hair on my body standing. The sound came from the roof. Long, dragging nails across old cedar. Then another. And another. I backed out of the cabin and scanned the roofline. Nothing. No branches. No animals. Just that sound. I started hiking back immediately. 5 miles out. Daylight fading. Heart hammering like I was prey. I didn't sleep that night. The next day I returned with 2 rangers. The cabin was empty. No journal. No scratch marks. Nothing. They looked at me like I was crazy or tired, or maybe overworked. But I saw the look the older ranger gave me when I mentioned the scratching. Like he knew. Before I left that post for good, he stopped me one night. "There's something old in those woods," he said. "Doesn't chase, doesn't howl, just waits for someone to notice it. So if you ever find a cabin with no markings and a swept floor deep on Broken Elk Trail, don't enter. And whatever you do, don't break the silence." The name's Michelle Tanner. Same one from Full House? Meh. I've worked in a half dozen state parks across the Southwest, but nothing ever rattled me like what I saw at Devil's Hollow. It's a box canyon tucked into the far end of Horseshoe Mesa Reserve. So remote, we only check the perimeter every couple of weeks. No trails, no campsites. Locals say the area's cursed. I never bought into that stuff until the night I saw the lights. It was early March, cold, dry wind, and moon so thin it barely lit the ground. I was doing a solo patrol, scouting a new fire break line, when my radio picked up a strange frequency. Just a ping. Not one I recognized. Not emergency. Not ranger comms. Then the static broke, and a voice whispered something unintelligible. Then a pause. Then it said my name. Not my call sign, my actual name. I killed the radio and stood still, listening. That's when I saw the first light. Blue, small, floating maybe 50 feet ahead near the rim of the hollow. It didn't blink, didn't sway, just hovered. Then a second one appeared, red this time, lower to the ground. I tried my flashlight. The beam hit nothing. No trees, no animals, just dust and scrub. But the light stayed. I reached for my camera, and they vanished. No sound, no wind. I turned to head back, but now the path behind me had lights too. White and soft, flickering like distant lanterns. I called out, rationalizing it as another park ranger playing a prank. Or maybe hikers with gear they shouldn't have. That's when all the lights blinked out, and something moved behind me. I turned just in time to see the silhouette scramble out of sight. Tall, thin, longer than it should have been. It made no noise, just breathing, just shifted like it wasn't fully there. I ran, scrambled up the rocks, tripping on roots and gravel until I hit the ridgeline. When I looked back, there were dozens of lights in the hollow now, circling, shifting, spiraling. I stood there, transfixed, until a sharp ringing filled my ears and I passed out cold. They found me the next morning. No injuries. Radio was fried, and my camera memory wiped clean. One of the older rangers, he never laughed at ghost stories, pulled me aside later and said, "You saw them, didn't you? The ones that walk on beams of color." He said they show up once every decade, always in March, always in Devil's Hollow. He said the last ranger who saw them disappeared a week later. They found her boots by the canyon rim. Nothing else. So if you're ever deep in Horseshoe Mesa and see lights with no source, don't follow, because they already know your name. I'm Ben Harker. Used to work the north loop of Falcon Ridge State Park. Dense forest, tight switchbacks, and one particularly infamous section known by locals as the loop that doesn't end. We always joked about it. Said hikers who got turned around were just poor with maps. But after what happened to me in the fall of 2021, I don't make fun of them anymore. It was mid-October, last patrol before the winter gate closed. I was checking trail markers and clearing brush. Weather was turning. Crisp air, copper leaves, long shadows that hit different. About a mile into the North Loop, my GPS went haywire. Screen jittered, spinning like it had lost satellites. I figured it was interference from the ridge, so I trusted my gut and kept walking. Then I saw it. Trail marker 13. Odd, because I had passed it 15 minutes earlier. I thought I'd doubled back. Easy mistake. I picked a different fork at the next split. 10 minutes later, marker 13 again. I checked my watch. 47 minutes since I'd entered the loop. No elevation change. No new landmarks. Just the same few bends. Same fallen log. Same marker. I started marking trees with chalk. The marks reappeared faster than they should have. Then came the whispering. At first, it was behind me, then ahead, then all around. Nothing distinct, just syllables smeared across the trees like fog. I radioed base. Static. I tried my compass. Needle spun slowly, deliberately. Then I heard footsteps. Not animal. Booted. Heavy. I called out, thinking maybe another ranger was messing with me. No reply. But the footsteps didn't stop. I hid behind a boulder, off trail, heart hammering. That's when I saw them. 4 hikers, faces blank, literally blank. No eyes, no nose, just smooth skin. Their limbs were too long, and their feet didn't quite touch the ground. They moved in a perfect loop, around the tree, over the log, past marker 13. Again and again, like a recording on repeat. I tried to sneak out, moving slow and low. Every direction I went led me right back to the same damn spot. Then one of them turned its head toward me. No face. But I knew it saw me, and it smiled. Not with the mouth, with the sound. A sound like bark splitting. I ran the heck out of there. Somehow, don't ask me how, I made it out. I stumbled onto the main service road just before dusk. When I turned back, marker 13 was gone. I filed my report. They said it was stress, fatigue. But the North Loop was closed for trail erosion 2 days later. Still is. If you ever hike Falcon Ridge and find yourself passing the same marker too many times, turn around and pray you're not already part of the loop. My name's Julia, a ranger for Elkhead Pass National Forest in Colorado. For the record, I've logged over 12 years in the backcountry. I've seen it all. Cougars tracking night hikers, flash floods that ripped away entire buildings, even a group of survivalists who tried to build a tree fort using only hatchets and raw confidence. But nothing prepared me for the night I heard the tree scream. It was late September, just after a storm knocked out several trails near the eastern bluff. I was running solo recon to inspect a slide zone. There's an old growth pine section that overlooks Elkhead Gorge, and we'd had reports of damage to the ridgeline. I started the hike around 3 p.m., made it up by sunset. That's when I saw it. One of the trees had split. Not from lightning, though. From the inside. The bark peeled in thick, curling strips. Sap ran down in thick black streams. Not amber. Not sticky. Black. And it smelled like something rotting. I circled it, snapping photos for the maintenance report. Then I heard it. A low groan. Not the wind through the trees. This came from inside the trunk. A vibration. A sound too human. I stepped back. The tree let out a sound so loud, so wrong, it dropped me to my knees. A scream, not of air, but pressure, like an organ note forced through a hollow bone. I stumbled to my feet and ran. As I cleared the ridge, I heard it again, but now it was coming from multiple directions. The trees were screaming. I made it back to base just after midnight, shaking. I tried to explain it to myself, to my supervisor, to the soil technician we brought up the next day. But the tree was gone. Not fallen, not burnt. Gone. Roots still in the dirt, but the trunk was just missing. In its place, a blackened patch of ground and a lingering hum in the air that made my molars ache. The technician said the sap sample I collected wasn't sap at all. Lab said it had properties similar to nerve tissue. Human. I haven't gone back to the bluff since, but every few weeks, campers in the area report strange noises at night. Wailing that echoes between the cliffs. Most people blame coyotes or wind, but I know what it is. And if you ever hike Elkhead Pass and find a tree that looks like it's peeling itself apart from the inside, don't get close, because some things in the forests don't fall. They scream. My name's Devin, and I've been with the Park Service for 21 years. Most of it spent patrolling lowland preserves and swampy backwoods. No tourist brochures ever mention. But I've never forgotten my temporary assignment to Blackroot Marsh, and I never will. The marsh lies in the southeast corner of the preserve, off limits to campers, full of sinkholes and twisted cypress. We only check the trail boundaries every few weeks, usually in pairs. But when budget cuts hit in 2017, I pulled a solo weekend rotation. Day one was uneventful. Mud, mosquitoes, the usual. But that night, just after sunset, I heard the first call. Hello? It came from deep in the marsh where there were no trails. A man's voice, calm, repeating the same tone, the same pitch, over and over. I radioed base, no response. Then came another call, softer, echoing to the left. Is someone there? It wasn't a question. It sounded like a recording. I froze. The swamp was too quiet. No frogs, no birds, just mud and fog and those repeating voices. I stayed in my tent that night, weapon close. I didn't sleep. The next morning I found tracks, barefoot, leading to my tent and back out again. I followed them until they vanished into a sinkhole. That afternoon, the voices came again, louder, closer. This time they used my name. I packed to leave early, but the boardwalk trail was gone, submerged, and on the water's surface were dozens of tiny ripples, like footsteps walking without weight. I backtracked to high ground and spent the night in the ranger outpost, door barred. Around 2 a.m., I heard tapping on the windows. No knocking, just tapping, like long fingers drumming. Then came the voices again, from all sides. Is someone there? I didn't answer. I didn't move. The next morning, the trail was back, dry and visible like it had never disappeared. I ran the whole way out. Later, I asked one of the senior wardens about it. His face went gray. He told me the marsh has old stories, pre-colonial ones, about the hollow callers. Spirits or things pretending to be. They can't cross wood, can't climb, but they mimic. They wait for people to answer. I never went back. If you're ever near Blackroot Marsh and hear a voice asking for help or, worse, calling your name, don't respond, because once you speak back, they know where you are. I'm Avery Holt, ranger stationed at Granite Peak Preserve. Elevations just shy of 9,000 feet. Treacherous slopes, long exposure, and weather that changes on a dime. Most rescues out there are just from overconfident climbers or people who push too far past dusk. But one call in the fall of 2019 still keeps me up. A group of 4 hikers had gone missing near the upper ridge. Their GPS pings showed them following Trail 6 up until 5:42 p.m. Then, nothing. No movement, no signal. I was sent to investigate at dawn. The fog was thick that morning, not rolling in, but rising from the ground. About 4 miles in, I found the first backpack, propped neatly on a stump, zipped, full of gear, no sign of struggle. Then a water bottle, half buried in frost. Then a boot, upright, laces still tied, no foot in it. Then the fog deepened. I tried my radio. Dead. That's when I saw the line. A straight divide in the mist, like a curtain. On one side, visibility maybe 10 feet. On the other, nothing but white. And I could hear breathing. Not mine. Slow, rhythmic, heavy. Inhaled through something wrong. Wet. I called out. No answer. Then footsteps, one after the other, crunching gravel, coming toward me from the other side of the fog wall. I drew my sidearm, issued warnings, stepped backward. A face emerged, but it wasn't a person. It looked like one, but hollowed, as if someone had worn a mask for too long, and it started becoming part of them. Its eyes were too round, too still. Behind it, more shapes emerged, all standing still, silent, watching. I turned and ran. As I descended, the fog cleared almost instantly. Back at base, I submitted my report. No one found the hikers. No trace beyond that line. Their families were told they likely fell from the ridge. But I know better. The fog at Granite Peak doesn't roll in. It waits. And it takes. If you ever hike Trail 6 and see a wall of mist that doesn't move, turn back. Because some clouds aren't made of air. And some things inside them remember your name. The name's Russ Conley. I've spent 2 decades rotating through backcountry fire towers. Wyoming, Montana, even did Idaho for a spell. Some people can't handle the isolation. I used to think I was built for it. Until Tower 14. That one broke me. Tower 14 was tucked way out in Redwater Ridge, 12 miles from the nearest service road, reachable only by foot or pack mule. It was last staffed in 2005 and hadn't been touched since. When I got assigned there for a 2-week fire watch during a bad lightning season, I figured it'd be quiet. The hike in was uneventful, but the tower, something was off. The trapdoor hatch was open when I arrived. Inside, everything was pristine, clean, too clean. Fresh food in the cabinet, a kettle on the stove. Bedding turned down like someone had just stepped out. I radioed base. They confirmed no one had been there for years. The first night, I couldn't sleep. Something about the place felt occupied. Around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy boots. I called out. No answer. The steps stopped just outside the latch. I grabbed my flashlight, yanked the trapdoor open, and shined the beam down. Nothing. No one. I locked it after that. The next day I found fresh boot prints in the dirt around the tower. Deep, wide gate. Barely scuffed, like someone pacing in a perfect circle. That night, the same thing. Footsteps, pause, and silence. Then tapping on the glass from the outside of the observation deck, 12 feet off the ground. I didn't look. Didn't sleep. The third night, it escalated. I woke to the hatch swinging open on its own. A man stood there, ranger uniform, face in shadow. He pointed at the map table, then vanished. Gone. I snapped. I hiked out at dawn. Mid-shift be damned. The supervisor wasn't surprised. He told me Tower 14 was decommissioned for a reason. In '05, the ranger station there went missing. Left a journal that ended with a single sentence scrawled across 6 pages. He climbs the stairs, but never opens the door. They only reopened it because every other tower was full. Tower 14 is empty again now. But sometimes, rangers on nearby peaks report strange radio signals. Just static, and then knocking. So if you're ever stationed alone in a remote tower and hear footsteps after midnight, don't open the latch, because some shifts were never meant to end. I'm Chase Moran, and if there's one place I tell every rookie ranger to avoid after dark, It's Widow's Wash. It's a shallow creek crossing in the back corner of Pike Hollow Preserve. Hard to reach, unremarkable by daylight, and used mostly by wildlife. But at night, the place changes. Locals whisper that something was buried there. Some say it's cursed. I used to laugh at all of it. Until last spring. I'd been tracking a mountain lion reported near the southeast quadrant. I ended up working later than expected, and by the time I started heading back to base, dusk was falling. The quickest way home was through Widow's Wash. As I approached, I noticed something odd. No frogs. No bugs. The whole area was silent. Then I saw the stones. 3 of them, arranged in a perfect triangle in the water. Not natural, deliberate. I stepped into the wash. The air changed, thick and electric. My breath fogged even though it was nearly 70 degrees. Then the fog rolled in. Fast, dense, and through it, a figure appeared. A woman in tattered dress, long hair matted to her face. She stood on the opposite bank, motionless. I called out. No response. I took a step forward. She mirrored me. Another step, another mirror. I raised my hand. She didn't copy that, though. Instead, she lifted her face. Her eyes weren't eyes, just hollow pits. And when she opened her mouth, I heard the sound of rushing water, like a dam breaking. The fog closed in. I ran back the way I came, stumbling in the dark, heart jackhammering. When I turned to look, she was gone. But the stones were now on my side of the bank. That night, my boots wouldn't dry. No matter what I did, they remained soaked. The next morning, one of the patrol guys asked why my name was carved into a rock by the wash. I went back and there it was, chiseled, old, like it had always been there. The senior rangers didn't say much, but one gave me a look I'll never forget and said, "You walk through her place. Most don't come back." I never took that trail again. Widow's Wash still runs clear, quiet. Hikers sometimes report seeing a woman standing just beyond the fog line. If you ever find yourself at a crossing where there should be no stones, and someone is watching you from across the water, don't step in, because some trails don't lead out. They pull you under. My name's Miles Carver, and I patrol the northern section of Arrowhead National Park, a stretch of wilderness packed with cliffs, alpine lakes, and a treacherous area we call Boulder Pass. That name's not just for show. It's a narrow ridgeline trail flanked by sheer granite on one side and 1,000-foot drop on the other. We advise against crossing it after rain or snow, but hikers don't always listen. Last October, a solo hiker named Kara Whitman went missing near the pass. She left a GPS ping at the trailhead and never checked in again. 3 days later, I went up with a rescue unit. We found her first tent, still zipped. Inside were clothes, food, even her boots, but no Kara. A few 100 feet up the trail, the boulders got strange. They weren't just strewn about, they were stacked. Massive slabs, some bigger than trucks, balanced in arches and spirals. Too precise to be natural. No tool marks, no footprints. Then we heard it. A low rumbling sound, like distant thunder, but steady, coming from beneath the rocks. One of the younger rangers leaned over a crevice and shouted down. Something shouted back. Not an echo, not her voice. Something deep, guttural. Then we saw movement. One of the boulders shifted just a little, then another, then 3 at once. They weren't rocks. They were part of something. We backed away fast. The ground trembled. Cracks split the trail beneath us. We radioed for evac, but all we got was static, and that sound again. The next day, the boulder field looked different, as if it had swallowed part of the trail. The arches were gone, only smooth slabs remained. They found Kara's journal later, wedged into a tree root a mile downhill. One entry, scratched in dirt-stained pen. It sleeps beneath. The rocks breathe. Since then, I've had dreams, or nightmares. Things shifting below my bed, hollow voices vibrating through stone. They say Boulder Pass is stable again, but I know better. If you ever hike it and you feel the ground tremble, don't stop to look, because some trails don't go over mountains. They go into them. I'm Denise Varlow, backcountry ranger stationed near Deadwater Lake, an isolated glacial basin tucked in a ring of cliffs that never sees full sunlight, even at noon. It's peaceful in an eerie way. Still. Too still. What happened last summer changed how I see that place forever. A pair of campers had reported strange lights over the lake, but when we checked, there was nothing. A week later, a solo hiker named Martin Cobb failed to return from a photography trip out that way. I was assigned to search. Day 1 was normal. Quiet. Overcast. The usual damp air. I reached the lake by dusk and set up camp at the designated platform on the southern edge. The lake was like glass, perfectly still. No wind, no ripples, not even bugs. That night, I stepped out of my tent around midnight to check the perimeter. That's when I saw it. My reflection. But it didn't move when I did. It stood across the lake in the exact opposite of me, staring. Same face, same build, same ranger gear, but its arms hung too low, and the eyes weren't mine. They were sunken, hollow. It raised a hand. I hadn't moved. Then it stepped forward, onto the surface. It walked across the water, not through it, not disturbing it, like the lake was glass. I turned and ran into the trees, heart thundering. I didn't stop until dawn. When I returned, my tent was untouched, but my boots were wet on the inside, and there were 2 sets of prints leading down to the water. Mine and someone else's, barefoot, deep, leading out to the lake. I hiked out immediately. They never found Martin Cobb, but 1 week later, a man with his exact appearance showed up at a ranger station 2 states away, confused, sunburned, with no memory of where he'd been. Only thing he said before they took him to the hospital was, "It's not a lake, it's a mirror." I haven't been back. If you ever camp at Deadwater and you see your reflection move when you didn't, don't follow it, because some things don't want to be trapped anymore, and they'll trade places with you if you let them. I'm Clay Harmon, longtime ranger at Ridgefall National Preserve in Oregon. Devil's Ladder is the most dangerous ascent in the entire range. An old fire trail that clings to a sheer cliff face like a goat path carved by daredevils. It's technically off limits now, but some locals still use it. They shouldn't. About 5 years ago, we had an incident. 3 hikers went missing during a weekend climb. I was on search and rescue that week. We found their gear, ropes, packs, water, at various points along the trail, but not them. The only thing we recovered was a phone. It was smashed, waterlogged, but the SD card was intact. There were voice memos. Only one played clearly. At first, just wind, then panting, then a voice, panicked, male. "They keep screaming. They keep screaming my name." What followed was pure static and something in the background. Screams, but not human. Animalistic, twisting in pitch and depth. Then, silence. We shut down the search after a week. Too dangerous. No remains were ever found. That would have been the end of it, until last spring. A woman came into the station, shaking. Said she was hiking below the cliffs when she saw 3 figures way up on Devil's Ladder. She said they were waving at her, but not for help. In unison, all 3. I went to investigate, hiked halfway up, stopped at an old overlook. That's when I heard it. Screaming, far above. But it was my name, Clay, over and over, in 3 different voices, in perfect time. The kind of synchronized chant that shouldn't happen naturally. I descended fast. As I reached the base, I glanced back. 3 silhouettes stood at the top. They didn't move, didn't wave, just stared. The wind picked up, and for a second, I thought I heard them again, laughing. No one's been up since, and we posted new warnings, but people still ignore them. So if you ever find yourself tempted by the view from Devil's Ladder, and you hear voices calling your name, don't answer, because not all who fall are lost. Some stay behind. My name's Joel Winslow, and I'm stationed up at Lost Elk Ridge in northern Colorado. It's one of those places maps barely chart. Hundreds of miles of alpine wilderness, steep switchbacks, and weather that can kill you faster than any predator. But there's something else out here. They call it the breather. Old timers say it's been around since before the land was protected. Something that comes in winter when the snow buries everything and silence becomes heavy. I didn't believe it until the storm of 22. We had a freak whiteout roll through. Visibility dropped to 0. Radio towers iced over. I took shelter in a remote station cabin halfway up Ridgepoint Pass. Just me, a stove, and a narrow window coated in frost. Around 1 a.m., I woke up. Not to sound, but to pressure. Like the room was breathing with me. Exhale, inhale. Faint at first, but not mine. It was rhythmic, wet, heavy. I held my breath. It didn't stop. The sound moved toward the cabin wall, then around it, then to the door. I grabbed my rifle. Didn't make a sound, but the doorknob began to turn, slowly, creaking with frost. I yelled. Whatever was outside stopped. Then came the voice. Whispered. Close. Too close. Let me in, Joel. My name. The voice was wrong. A little too smooth. Like a recording played back just off speed. Then came the breath. Hot, slow, fogging the window from the outside. I didn't sleep. Come dawn, I opened the door, rifle raised. Nothing. Just perfect snow. No prints. No sign anyone had been there. Except one thing. On the inside of the window, written in fog, one breath left. Now, every winter, someone reports hearing it, deep breathing in the trees, on the wind, beside their tent. Always in storms, always at night. If you're ever snowed in by Lost Elk Ridge, and the wind starts breathing back, hold yours, because if the breather hears you, it only takes one more. My name is Jackson Tell, stationed at Iron Jaw Wilderness in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Remote as hell, full of dense cedar swamps and deep, silent woods. There's a place out here that's not on any park map. Locals call it the cabin that calls. We don't talk about it much. I was first told about it by an old-timer during my rookie year. He said, if you ever hear hammering out past marker 32, turn around. Don't look for the source, and don't answer. I thought he was just hazing me. Then came the hiker reports. People saying they heard a cabin being built, wood chopping, nails being driven, where no structures exist. Every one of those reports came from the same area. Last September, I decided to investigate. I hiked past marker 32, deep into an overgrown part of the forest. That's when I heard it. Thunk, thunk, tap, tap, tap. The sound of a hammer, rhythmic, unrelenting. No voices, no machinery, just the hammering. I followed it. Not far ahead, the trees opened into a small clearing, and there it was, a cabin. New wood, no moss or rot, smoke from the chimney, but no windows, no door, just perfectly sanded walls on all four sides. I circled it, confused. Every side was the same, featureless. And then I heard a voice from inside. Help me build. Calm, even, almost pleasant. I backed away. The voice came again. Help me build. And then I saw movement. The wood on the front wall began to shift, like planks rearranging themselves. They parted and something stepped out. Tall, wrapped in burlap, holding a mallet. Its head was a blank circle of splintering wood, pulsing like a drum with each step. I ran. The sound of hammering followed me for miles. I reached base camp at nightfall, shaking and breathless. I didn't file a report, just marked the area as unsafe terrain. That cabin hasn't shown up on any satellite images, but some nights we still hear building sounds echoing from that part of the forest. And once, we found a fresh nail, long and hand-forged, on the ranger station porch. If you ever hike Iron Jaw and hear the sound of hammering in the distance, don't follow it, because some structures, they don't want shelter, they want builders. The name's Tobias Harlan, and I worked the eastern sector of Whispering Ridge Preserve in Tennessee for nearly 8 years before I transferred out. There's a trail there called Hollow Loop, narrow switchbacks carved into thick pine forest, used mostly by birders and the occasional solo backpacker. It's beautiful, serene. But I've never walked it alone since 2020. That spring, a new ranger, Ellie, went missing on her first solo patrol. Just vanished. No distress call, no prints past the trail's midpoint. I helped with the search. We scoured every ravine, every slope. All we ever found was her notebook wedged between 2 tree roots. The last page was covered in identical lines. Not me, not me, not me. After that, I avoided Hollow Loop until the incident last fall. A hiker reported strange cries, like someone calling for help, in Ellie's voice. I hiked up, armed, half expecting a prank. The trail was empty. Then about 2 miles in, I heard it. Hello over there. Ellie's voice, clear as day, directionless. I stopped. The trees were quiet. No birds. No wind. Then again, it's me, I'm stuck. But it wasn't. It was practiced, like a recording. I backed away, heart pounding. That's when the forest changed. The trees were wrong, too evenly spaced. Their bark smooth, colorless, like something had made them. I turned to retrace my steps, only to find the path behind me was gone. The trail had closed, and then, from just ahead, footsteps, soft, barefoot. I didn't wait. I ran, blindly, until I burst out onto a fire road half a mile off trail. When I looked back, the trees were normal again. I filed a report. They told me I must have wandered into a low oxygen pocket, hallucinated. But Ellie's voice still echoes near that trail sometimes. Other hikers have reported it too. Always the same phrases, always in her voice. We closed Hollow Loop permanently last month. But if you ever sneak past the barrier and hear a voice calling from the woods, especially if it sounds like someone you know, don't follow, because sometimes the forest isn't empty. It's just pretending. I'm Lane McQuaid, Senior Ranger at Birch Run State Forest up in Maine. It's a sea of white and birch and dark soil, crisscrossed with narrow trails that vanish in snow. Peaceful, sure, but you learn quickly to respect what lives out there. In 2021, we started getting reports from hunters. They weren't wild about paperwork, but when 3 separate men reported seeing a tall figure just standing in the trees, same height, same stillness, same location, I started listening. Each claimed the same thing. It wasn't moving, it was watching. At first, I assumed it was a prank or a trick of the light, but when a group of backpackers came in pale and shaken, one girl sobbing, saying they'd camped near the Birch Run Hollow and woke to see something standing just outside their tents. He didn't make a sound, didn't move, just stood there until sunrise, when he disappeared. I hiked in to investigate. I didn't find a person, but I found a ring of deer skulls nailed to the trees surrounding their camp, each skull facing inward. No tracks, no drag marks, no blood. And in the center of the ring, one of the trail markers, freshly uprooted, lying face up. That same week, my trail camera caught something. Frame 1, empty path. Frame 2, a tall shape among the birches. Frame 3, nothing again. It was just 3 seconds apart. I enlarged the frame. The figure was wearing something like a parka, but the arms were too long, hanging to the knees. And the head was wrong, too narrow, no face. We pulled all teams from the quadrant. Since then, the sightings haven't stopped. Always in the same area. Always watching. I'm reading a book about anti-gravity. It's impossible to put down. OldDadGuy. You thought you were alone, didn't you? But they've been watching the whole time. Like, subscribe, and maybe they'll let you sleep tonight.